In the year 1666, an exceptionally charismatic rabbi and Kabbalist by the name of Sabbatai Zevi declared himself to be the Messiah. Born to an affluent family in western Anatolia, he was a particularly eccentric mystic who had attained a massive following of over 1 million devotees during his lifetime, roughly half the world's Jewish population in the 17th century. His extraordinary popularity, according to historians such as Professor Gershom Scholem, resulted largely from the publication and availability of what is today called the Lurianic Kabbalah. Named after Rabbi Isaac Luria, this new Kabbalah enjoyed broad dissemination in the 1500s thanks to the invention of the printing press in the previous century. Jews from around the world for the first time had access to occult literature about the deeper meaning of their faith, and the popularity of Jewish mysticism soared. A key aspect of the Lurian Kabbalah is that it required active participation to set the stage for the arrival of the Messiah, to bring about the conditions that would initiate or directly expedite the fulfillment of Jewish messianic prophecy. In other words, instead of simply waiting for God to act, the Lurianic perspective expected Jews to play an active role in bringing forth God's kingdom on earth. This new European Kabbalah, as opposed to the older Chaldean version, is unanimously attributed to Luria and was extremely popular at the time, and is still the most broadly disseminated and used Kabbalistic system taught today. Part of this Kabbalistic method included ways of interpreting the supernatural relationship between events and time, often through letters and numbers. The magical emphasis given to the numerological value of dates contributed greatly to the widely held expectations and hope placed on the coming of a Messiah at the time of Sabbatai Zevi's advent of the 18th day, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6, of the 6th month of the year 1666. Sabbatai Zevi's messianic claims were rejected by the leading rabbis of Jerusalem, as well as the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, who offered to behead him if he didn't convert to Islam, which he immediately did. Sabbatai's formal conversion to Islam really dismayed many of his followers, to say the least, but those who continued to be loyal to the Sabbatean movement took it as a sign to also convert to Islam, while secretly maintaining their Jewish identity and mystical occult practices, which included religious orgies involving incest, sex magic, and sacrifice. His followers are known today in Turkey as the Donme, which translates to religious converts, a derogatory term which they themselves never used. And so the Lurian Kabbalah became a mystical synthesis between pagan teachings which preceded the Torah and Gnostic elements of Judaism. Many texts pertaining to the Kabbalah, including the Zohar, say that the task is not to destroy evil, but to return it to its source. To put it simply, to include the left within the right, in the Zoroastric metaphor, or to uplift the fallen sparks in the Lurianic one. The rapid spread of the teachings of Rabbi Isaac Luria and his Lurianic Kabbalah resulted in a grafting of the then current theories of the Kabbalists onto the traditional Jewish view of the role and personality of the Messiah. This new philosophic paradigm, in the estimation of many scholars, provided a spiritual justification for proactive Zionism, and therefore the events that directly brought about the modern formation of Israel.
בכל העניינים. גם האישיים, גם הלאומיים. מה שישראל לאחרונה זאת נתצו כמה עניינים.
פתחו כמה.
מה שרואה עוד, וגם מצו שעדיין משיח ליבו. אז הייתה מה שהוא ומה ידיעתו.
ועושים.
הכנראה שהיא מספיק, כי היום כבר כמה שעות בגין ועדיין ליבו. אבל יש עוד כמה שעות, אבל יש להשתדל גם היום, בצורות טובות. זה שמחה וטוב לבוא. כדי שחסידים מקפידים שכל עניינים יהיו שמחה. בצורות טובות, הצלחה רבה.
Sabbatai Zevi declared himself to be the Jewish Messiah in the year 1666. This false Messiah led the largest Messiah movement in Jewish history and attracted more than half the population of European Jews. How did he do it? By promising to return the Jews to their ancestral homeland in Palestine. Sabbatai Zevi made everything that was holy unholy. He rejected the rules of the Jewish holy books and every standard of Jewish decency. There would be no more guilt or sin or right or wrong. No more sexual taboos, no more 10 commandments, no more fasting. Instead, there would be feasting. Sabbatai Zevi's immoral leadership finally fell from grace when the Sultan of Turkey threatened him with torture unless he converted to Islam. Sabbatai converted to Islam, but he brought his infectious evil theology with him.
But very few people have heard of Sabbatai Zevi, who declared himself the Messiah in 1666. By proclaiming redemption was available through acts of sin, he amassed a following of over 1 million passionate believers, which was about half of the world's Jewish population during the 17th century. Although many rabbis at the time considered him a heretic, his fame extended far and wide. Sabbatai's adherents planned to abolish many ritualistic observances because, according to the Talmud, holy obligations would no longer apply in the Messianic time. Fasting days became days of feasting and rejoicing. Sabbateans encouraged and practiced sexual promiscuity, adultery, incest, and religious orgies. About a century after Sabbatai Zevi's death in 1676, his Kabbalistic successor, Jacob Frank, expanded upon and continued his occult philosophy. Frankism, a religious movement of the 18th and 19th centuries, centered on his leadership and his claim to be the reincarnation of the Messiah, Sabbatai Zevi, and he, like Zevi, would perform strange acts that violated traditional religious taboos, such as eating fats forbidden by Jewish dietary laws, ritual sacrifice, and promoting orgies and sexual immorality. He often slept with his followers, as well as his own daughter, while preaching a doctrine that the best way to imitate God was to cross every boundary, transgress every taboo, and mix the sacred with the profane. Hebrew University of Jerusalem professor Gershom Scholem called Jacob Frank, and I quote, one of the most frightening phenomena of the whole Jewish history. So Jacob Frank would eventually enter into an alliance formed by Adam Weishaupt and Mayor Amschel Rothschild called the Order of the Illuminati. The objectives of this organization was to undermine the world's religions and power structures in an effort to usher in what they considered a utopian era of basically global communism, which they would covertly rule through their hidden hand, which they called the New World Order. Using secret societies, such as the Freemasons, their agenda has played itself out over the centuries, staying true to the script. The Illuminati handle opposition by a near total control of the world's media, academic opinion leaders, politicians, and financiers. Still considered nothing more than just a theory to many, more and more people are starting to wake up each day to the possibility that this is not just a theory, but an actual conspiracy.
Jacob Frank Leibovich is the mastermind behind a global network of satanic cults. He taught that the Creator God was evil. Jacob Frank proclaimed himself as the true Messiah. He vowed never to tell the truth. He rejected every moral law and declared that the only way to a new society was through the total destruction of civilization. Murder, rape, incest, and the drinking of blood were perfectly acceptable actions and rituals. His followers established the Marxist system and have infiltrated Islam and Judaism. He was the Messiah of the Illuminati.
1 century later, Jacob Frank proclaimed himself to be the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi and the living Messiah for all Jews. Not even Sabbatai Zevi was as evil as Jacob Frank and his disciples. Jacob Frank rejected traditional Judaism. He reversed the truth and told his followers, since we can't all be saints, let's all be sinners. The best way to imitate God, said Frank, is to cross every boundary, transgress every taboo, and mix, as God did, the sacred with the profane. Orgies, incest, rape, and sexual intercourse with children, including sodomy on young boys, were no longer sinful. In 1773, Jacob Frank traveled to Frankfurt, Germany, the birthplace of the Illuminati. That's where he formed an unholy alliance with Adam Weishaupt and Mayor Amschel Rothschild's banking dynasty. The ambition of the Rothschild dynasty was to win control of the world's gold, central banks, and wealth. The Rothschilds sent John Jacob Astor, Jacob Schiff, and Paul Warburg to America, where they influenced the privatization of the Federal Reserve banking system and the dismantling of the American Constitution.
1817, Lord Allenby conquered the Holy Land, and the Jews were promised a national home in Palestine by the Earl of Balfour, a policy endorsed by Woodrow Wilson and by the League of Nations, which made Palestine a British mandate.
The Balfour Declaration was signed on behalf of the British government and mentions Lord Rothschild by name, requesting that he bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. The Rothschild prominence in this historic situation cannot be understated, especially since it is the Rothschild family that eventually designed and financed the Knesset, Israel's parliament, including the pyramid with the eye and all the other occult symbology. The Rothschild family descended from Mayor Amschel Rothschild, who was born in what is now Frankfurt, Germany, and went on to establish a huge international banking empire. Through his 5 sons, Mayor Amschel Rothschild expanded his banking fortune, with his 5 sons each stationed at one of the major European financial centers: Frankfurt, London, Naples, Vienna, and Paris. In the 19th century, the Rothschild family were at the height of their powers, and they utilized this power by effecting some very significant events in human history in order to profit greatly from it. That said, you will not find a single mention of the name Rothschild in the Forbes list of 500 wealthiest people on earth, but they are clearly the richest family on earth, as well as one of the most corrupt.
If I were a rich man, if I were a wealthy man, I would work hard. If I were a rich, I don't know. house with rooms by the dozen, right in the middle of the town. A fine tin roof with a real wooden floors built. There will be one long staircase just going up and never longer coming down, and one more leading nowhere just for show. If I were a rich man, yabba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dum, all day long I biddy-biddy-bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard, yabba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dibba-dum. If I were a biddy-biddy rich, idle-diddle-diddle-diddle man. And it won't make one bit of difference if I answer right or wrong. When you're rich, they think you really know. If I
New World Order, Mr. Rothschild?
What?
New World Order? Depopulation?
Oh, listen, who are you...
Genocide?
Who are you televising for?
We just want to let you know the New World Order has no legitimacy, and that we as a people are not afraid, and we are waking up to the robber barons and the big banksters who are looting this economy with the Federal Reserve.
Well...
What do you, I mean, the Rothschilds family did start the Federal, they divided Europe first, took over Europe, the Napoleon.
Don't exaggerate.
The goal of Weishaupt and the Jesuits was to take control of the Vatican and its hierarchy of Catholic clergy. Weishaupt formed the Order of the Illuminati and infiltrated the Freemasonic lodges with his doctrine until every Masonic lodge in every nation accepted it. The Frankist goal was the destruction and replacement of Jewish ethics with a satanic religion based on the exact opposite of Jewish teachings. When this unholy alliance of conscienceless men was seeded, a cancerous war against humanity erupted. With Rothschild financing, Jacob Frank became fabulously wealthy and was put in charge of spreading a Luciferian theology that would be the hidden hand behind future wars and revolutions. Jacob Frank's followers were called Sabbatean Frankists. They practiced witchcraft and occult rituals, including animal and human sacrifices. Lucifer, they declared, was the true God. The Sabbatean Frankists expanded their movement by masquerading as converts to other religions. They converted to Catholicism and to Islam, where they embedded themselves and spread their Luciferian infection as closeted crypto-Jews. The Frankists traded their wives and daughters with members and with powerful non-members who they needed to seduce into their cult. Jewish professor Gershon Scholem called Jacob Frank one of the most frightening men in Jewish history. By 1776, Orthodox Jewish rabbis and leaders rejected Jacob Frank and the pagan invasion of evil that took hold in 18th century Europe. They declared Jacob Frank and his Luciferian followers to be heretic. Today, royals, politicians, banksters, and businessmen form the inner circle of the Sabbatean Frankist elite. They live secret, two-faced lives, sometimes posing as religious Jews or Christians or Islamists. Modern Zionism is rooted in the unholy alliance of Frank, Weishaupt, and Rothschild. It has infiltrated world religions, taken over Freemasonry, engineered wars and revolutions, and turned nations and citizens into their debt slaves worldwide. Unfortunately, Muslims, Christians, and Jews do not recognize their common enemy because that enemy is invisible. It hides within their own religion.